Welcome to the Confident Grief Coach Show.
Hi, I am Pat Shevland, founder of the Confident Grief Coach School.
And I'm Cami Thielander, Advanced Certified Grief Coach and founder of Embodied Grief Support Coaching.
We believe as professionals, it is important to have a forum where we can gather as a community to really talk about all things body, mind, and spirit when it comes to grief.
We will be sharing stories, discussing thought-provoking ideas, and interviewing others who work in the field of grief and those who have the lived experience of creating lives of peace and purpose after experiencing deep loss.
Information about Cami's Embodied Grief Support Coaching Services or the Confident Grief Coach Certification Program can be found in our show notes below.
Thank you for joining us at the Confident Grief Coach Show. And if you like what you're hearing or would like us to focus on a specific topic in the future, please hit the like and subscribe button to stay connected. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Cami. How you doing?
I'm doing all right today. I know we just chatted ahead of time about what we're going to talk about today. And
Oh, you froze.
you just froze.
Oh, you did
There
too.
you are.
Ah,
Okay, we're back.
we're back.
That kind of day today, I think.
Yep.
But yeah, I was just kind of checking in with myself before getting on this call, and I was like, honestly, I'm feeling a little low today, and I think it's ironic that it's Mental Health Awareness Month for the month of May, and here we are talking about this, and I'm kind of having a rough day. So I think that's good to just normalize that and recognize that. But seemed kind of fitting today. But how are you?
Interesting that you say that because as I was getting ready this morning and I thought about, oh, we're going to talk about mental health awareness and, it's the whole month going on here. And I have been going through my own mental health. So it's not like, oh my gosh, I need to go out and see someone right away, but it's just been, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just been like I needed to be softer with myself. And I just felt kind of down, but I didn't have anything that I know of, right? I mean, we could go through all the layers that was really creating it. It's like, why is this? Because the weather's getting better, I can enjoy my birds and do all of that. But I was just feeling like, I don't know. I don't have the energy that I normally have. And that was kind of bumming me out. And so I've shared with you and a lot of different people, like in our classes, that for Mother's Day, I just needed to totally be away from everybody. I needed to retreat because I'm around a lot of people and a lot of conversations. And I thought, oh, I'll get all kinds of work done for the school and all this kind of stuff. I sat with my dog. I went outside. We have these beautiful 3 acres on a river. I just would sit out there and I would just listen to all the birds. I'd put on my little Merlin app just to identify all the birds and just went capturing the northern lights late at night, and went for a long walk. But I didn't do anything as terms of work, but I did it for self-care. But it struck me this morning that yeah, this was like not depression, like clinical depression, but that I felt depressed and I really couldn't put my finger on why.
Yeah. So after you gave yourself the weekend to rest, did that shift anything for you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Like my husband was down in the cities and he came back up to our house like late yesterday afternoon. And I'm like, it was just amazing. I said, I just being able to just be has really made a difference. Like I feel alert now. I don't feel like I'm just dragging my butt, and not wanting to do anything. But I said, literally, I just sat and I didn't like sit and watch TV all the time, or I just sat or I journaled a lot. I mean, I just, just kind of wrote a lot of different stuff and just was being me, just with me, and that's one thing that's interesting is I've learned I really do enjoy just being with me once in a while and my dog.
Yeah. Yeah. And having that time to like recharge and intentionally like giving yourself that space to rest can work wonders. It's like
Yep.
it's so simple, it's so underrated and it seems counterintuitive, like, oh, I need to do something to take care of myself when really it's like that opposite of actually it's the non-doing that's gonna really be
Yeah.
the care and the support that we need. And I think that's interesting when it comes to like we speak of depression or this low energy. And that's something that I've been building a relationship with myself over the years. That's something I've struggled with since I was young, is depression and anxiety. And I've noticed that there seems to be some days where like like when I'm feeling that low energy, how my body's just asking me to rest. It's like, no, but please just slow down and just be and just sit and have that time alone and refill your cup by not engaging in the outside world. And we often fight that. Like, no, I need to be doing and keeping up with this fast pace of all these things to do in this life and these responsibilities. And we don't listen to that calling. And I know when I ignore that and I just keep going, that I burn out and then my body really makes me stop and slow down. I'll get sick or I'll just crash. Something will blow up where I really can't handle the situation and then I'm kind of forced to stop. So I think it's powerful when we can take those moments intentionally to
Yep.
slow down and recharge.
Yeah. Yeah. Interestingly, I wanted to share this story just because it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I mentioned to you, I went and got my nose pierced the other day, just something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. And yeah, I checked around when I was down in the cities and couldn't really find, but then when I was back up where we have our home on the river, we're close to a town called Brainerd. And so I was researching there and it was like, oh, this guy, he's got an opening. I'm gonna just take it. So I go in there and he was the most lovely person. I would say he's probably around your age group, right? Just lovely, sweet, very particular about his craft and his cleanliness and all of that. But just gentle, a gentle soul. And so we didn't really get into anything. He just really did what he did and I just felt surrounded in just like kindness and gentleness, professionalism, that I knew this was just going to be perfect, right? So I left. Well, when you leave, he gives you like three pamphlets and a little sheet of paper. A little sheet of paper is basically a thank you. Thank you for coming in, all of that. The one pamphlet is an aftercare pamphlet, and then there was another pamphlet about the jewelry that you bought. But then there's this pamphlet that he hands out, and it's Suicide Prevention Lifeline is on the front of the pamphlet. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So then as you open it, he puts his whole story.
Oh, wow.
So I start reading it, and basically, I'm just going to read a part of it. He said, a bit about myself. Oh, as I mentioned on the previous page, I want to use my platform to try and reach out. If my ramblings help a single person, this was worth it. A
Mm.
bit about myself and my dealings with depression slash dark thoughts. My life has been a series of ups and downs. It has been endless. I've found myself feeling like I've hit my all-time low more times than I can count. Some of the times I could see what was causing my pain. The death of my mom was a huge one, and I still struggle to this day. I have failed at friendships. I have failed at relationships. I have wondered how I could continue to sleep in a warm bed with a roof over my head. Those were in their own ways the easy ones. Simply because I could see what the problem was, I could focus on it. The ones that seem to be the hardest for me have been the ones that I simply don't understand. I will feel like I'm doing okay and then wake up one morning feeling down and hollow and empty for no good reason. Nothing sparked it. It's just there and it's hard to shake it. So then he goes on to say, in my experience, when that happens, the things that work best for me is to slow down. You're going to love this, and focus on my breathing and simply give it time. I'll remind myself that I am important, that I do matter, that I have a purpose here, even if I don't specifically know what that purpose is. I remind myself to simply push on and continue to try. He says we are fragile beings. There are so many different aspects of the human mind that are still yet to be understood. I am simply trying to say, even when we don't realize it, we matter. I matter. You matter. You're not alone. And his name is Tyler Hamlin. And then he puts a little to-do list. And in the Confident Grief Coach, we have, what I've coined the faith toolbox, finding awesome inspiration to heal. So this is what his are. Things that can help. Talk to a friend or a loved one. Even if you don't want to go into specifics, friendly conversation can help. Take a shower. Showers are relaxing and can help you feel rejuvenated. Make goals for yourself. Go for a walk. Let the fresh air in. Treat yourself. Get your nails done. Get a massage. Go to the movies. Eat healthy and stay hydrated. Practice meditation. Make art. Express yourself. Play with your pets. And remember, if you feel too overwhelmed, call the number on the front of this card. You, period, matter, period. And then he has the
Mm.
suicide prevention number on the front of the card. I tell you,
Mm.
I got home and I started reading this and I'm like, oh my, so, of course it's like, oh my gosh, the death of your mom, you're still experiencing that. And we know that we just talked about it in our class last night. Yeah, we had two grieving moms, one being the coach, one being the client, practicing with each other. And it was like how this grief can just, doesn't matter if it's 12 years, 20 years, or a year ago, it shifts and morphs. And, I think this guy, he expressed it so beautifully.
Mm. Thanks for sharing that. Thank you, Tyler, wherever you are in Brainerd in the world. That's powerful. I love that he's sharing his story and using it to empower people, come up with even just a list of things that we can do that, when we're in that space, sometimes feel really hard. Like even getting out of bed to take a shower or, talking with a friend can feel so out of our comfort zone where like we just don't have the energy for it. But it's like there really is a lot that we can be doing, and a lot of them are practicing non-doing, like you said, slowing down and breathing and doing these things that we can find these simple ways of nurturing ourselves, like eating a healthy meal or yeah, taking a shower. That gave me goosebumps sharing his story, so thanks for that.
Yeah, he doesn't know I'm sharing it, but I will let him know that. But it's public, so that's why I figured that it was okay because he hands this out to people. But I thought how appropriate. And basically, what he says in his material is that he has a craft. He's very, very, this is all he does is the piercings, right? He doesn't tattoo, he doesn't do any of that. He just does piercings. But he said, how many people come and they've all, they're coming for a reason. There's a purpose of why they're coming into our shop because they have a tattoo artist there too. And these people have a lot going on. And if I can just touch one person positively, that makes it really, really good, you know?
Yeah, and I think back too with my own experiences with just having a lot going on and struggling with mental health. I sought out like piercings and tattoos and some of these ways that I could feel something again, even if it was painful. Doing something to like stimulate that part of my body and just like, yeah, have some, yeah, something like that, that for me was a form of self-care, but also was maybe in some ways a way to get me to feel something. I mean, I can understand why people go and have, get the piercings and can get the tattoos when they have a lot going on in their life. That can be, for me, it was a form of like being grounded and getting into my body.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. For me, the same because I have several tattoos and lots of piercings on my ears and this nose piercing. It was just like I've been thinking about it for a long time, but isn't it funny that it all ended up coming when I was feeling kind of down in the dumps and needed something and I don't because it wasn't painful, but it is like being in our body and being self-expressed to allow ourselves to express ourselves in a way that feels right for us. And I have memorial tattoo of my mom with her, love mother signature on my arm, so a lot of people will do those type of things. And not saying that everybody should run out and, do that and basically, for your mental health. But there are things that a lot of us do that are mental health driven, probably. And
Yeah.
I hate to, when we talk about, oh, that's so cool. I got a bright red cardinal just sitting right outside my window. Hi. When a cardinal appears, a loved one is near. And I view him as my brother's sign because people were giving me red cardinals after he died. So what was I saying? Mental health awareness. There is so much going on, and it does cause great challenges because I know that it's getting younger and younger and younger, that, kids are struggling even in, grade school with anxiety and depression and things like that. So I don't want to minimize the great importance of mental health and support and being available for one another, but also to realize that we all have mental health. I mean, that's what we're shooting for, is for all of us to have good mental health, right? So it's not like pointing out certain people. It's just, we all have this. And so there is it's a continuum. There's some normalcy, right? Like we're all going to have those days or those weeks or weekends or whatever, like what I just experienced, what you've been experiencing. And then there's the continuum where, oh my gosh, they can't get out of bed and don't think that their life is worth living. And so I think that there's that whole spectrum of mental health, and how do we support it? And I think we do in our grief work. So talk to me a little bit, if you would, about what do you see from a mental health perspective when you're working with a client? Like you were just talking about that you had worked with a client about finding that support system the other day. So what are you seeing when your clients are coming to you and how that shifts their mental health?
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it with, with clients going through the Breathe program, and right in the Breathe program, we have them rate right away at the beginning, how they're feeling with things like where's their sadness and their depression at, where you're at with anxiety and overthinking and various other emotional challenges and that kind of stuff, and how engaged are you in your life in various ways. So right away getting a gauge of where they're at with those kinds of things, how they're showing up for their life, and how they're feeling that internal landscape of all the emotions. Um, and inevitably, throughout the Breathe program, we see that shift as we find these different forms of support to be able to come in there and, like he said, fill out that list of like, what can we do to recognize where things are feeling weak or feeling like you're struggling a lot in an area. Maybe you're feeling a lot of the sadness and depression. Like, what is within our power to do something about this, to be able to shift that? And I love the coaching approach because it very much is, okay, well, what's going to work for you, and what resources do you have available, and where might we be able to fill in those gaps to make sure that you feel supported? And I mean, all of the clients that I've worked with so far have seen a shift in those numbers and, have improved over the course of the program. So I think that, I mean, that goes to show just the empowerment that can happen when we start to get resourceful and we have people that we can lean to help us with this process, like a coach. But like you mentioned, my client from earlier this week was expressing to me she just lost her husband of 30 years last October and has been struggling, namely with a lot of depression. And one thing that she expressed to me was that she feels frustrated because she has some really close friends in her life, but they don't know how to show up for her. She doesn't really know how to come to them she just wants to talk. She just wants to vent and tell stories about her husband and express herself. And she's not a journaler, so the verbal processing is important for her as an outlet to help make sense of everything. So she had just spent the day with some friends and nobody asked her about, her grief for her husband. And she came to the session the next day so upset about it and feeling a lot of anger and feeling a lot of sadness because she felt very alone, even though she has a solid group of friends that she was spending time with. So we talked about it and we normalized, wow, like what must their experience be like? Here they are all out at lunch. Who dares to bring up the grief at lunch in a public space, knowing that there might be some emotion that comes out? So even just diving into that and figuring out how might she be able to communicate her needs with
Mhm.
the friends in her life? How might they be able to show up for her? She realized that she wasn't communicating her needs to them and she wasn't really being clear about requesting what she needs from them. And just with that shift, I mean, she left the session feeling so much more relieved, feeling like she actually does have the support in her life to be able to talk about her grief and express herself. So, even within an hour, she was able to shift those numbers from her life engagement, from her support system, and from what she was feeling with this anger and the sadness around her grief just by talking about what kind of support can we recruit from the resources that are available already, and showing up for one another and asking for the help and communicating our needs goes such a long way. So I think that's a very important part about, I mean, showing up for people in grief and even non-grief related struggles. How can we support one another in a better way and normalize these conversations and talk about the hard stuff with each other?
Well, and I think too with children, and I know that you have this heart intention that you really want to work with younger people, who are grieving. And it's not necessarily the physical loss of a person. There can be lots of different grief events in our lives, and where we, try to build the resiliency and that type of thing. But I think about my grandchildren and creating that space for children to be able to just have a safe space to talk and express their feelings. Because I watch some of these shows. I Netflix binge with my daughter-in-law when I'm there with her, and so many of these shows now are bringing up the awareness of mental health with teenagers, and self-harm and different things like the cutting. And we're watching a show where the girl burns herself, because it's a way to like make her feel something. It's kind of like what you're talking about, tattoos and piercings. It gets us back in her body. That like helps us. But it's like, whoa, and her family is like, oh my God, this is like crisis, which yes, it's a call, a cry, but she wasn't able to talk to anybody about it. And then all of a sudden a friend of hers happened to catch her in the act, and she could actually start expressing that. So even for the teenagers that are listening to this, supporting one another, being the Tylers of the world, right? And just being an ear, just to be heard and to be seen, could shift someone from. I'm not saying it's that simple. I know that there's so much with mental health, and I am not a mental health professional, so if anybody is like dealing with that, please seek out, get the support that you need, the professional support. But as coaches, we're dealing with people that do have, either they have the childhood effects that have reached into their adulthood, or they're dealing with grief, which there is depression with grief.
Yeah.
Not everybody needs to be put on medications or needs intensive therapy. Our coaching processes can help dramatically, because most of us, the higher percentage of people have a resiliency. We have that built in.
Yeah.
It's just tapping into it. But I just keep thinking about the children, and I look at my granddaughters, like, my 5-year-old granddaughter who expresses some anxiety, but I really take the time to I ask, just, can you put in words
Yeah.
what it is, and not dismiss when she's saying something that's a feeling for her.
Yeah.
And I
Mm.
think we can help everybody that we come in contact. And for you who really have a passion about helping younger people in their grieving journey, we can make such a difference in this world. And I hope to this is an ego, but I hope that the more of us that can be out there and speaking about this and holding the space and the energy and listening and hearing to other people and letting them be seen and heard, that you don't have to be calling a suicide prevention hotline because you're getting the support that you need.
Yeah.
But call it
Yeah.
if, but call it if. I mean,
Right.
if you're in that dark space and you just there's no coming out of it, then and those thoughts are coming through to do self-harm, please don't hesitate because there are people that they're so trained and they care. The people that are on these hotlines and lifelines care deeply.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the like relationship with grief and mental health because I think that can get really blurry, especially if someone's already struggling with mental health challenges and then a big loss occurs. You know, what is normal when it comes to
Right.
feeling grief and sadness and the depression or the stress and the overwhelm and the anxiety that comes with having to adjust to so many changes after someone dies or a non-death related change that comes with a lot of grief too. I think that can get blurry
Mm.
when we're dealing with that, yet they go so hand in hand. I mean, I remember for me in my own experiences, my dad died when I was 11, and I remember being 11 and being so depressed. Like I remember didn't really understand like really what that was, but I knew that it had to do with obviously me witnessing my dad becoming sick and dying. And I look back and I was like 11 years old. I wore sweatpants to Christmas that year. Like my hygiene even at 11 was just like I look back and I'm like, wow, I really was so sad and felt isolated. I didn't have a safe space to express myself. And over the years, not having these tools to be able to process my grief, I carried that grief with me for so long, on top of other experiences that happened that were stressful over the years. And I realized by the time I was 18 or 19 that I was like, wow, I've been depressed this whole time. I've been depressed for like 10 years of my life and I know that it had to do with grief. So so I started seeing a counselor and the doctor put me on some meds and I tried some depression medication and it wasn't helping me because at the end of the day, I wasn't dealing with my grief still. The counseling wasn't quite a good fit for me either and I explored a lot of other tools that were out there for me because I was like, I know that this is grief related. And I know that the more that I spend time and express myself and sit with myself and find these tools to process in a healthy way, rather than distracting, rather than avoiding my feelings that was actually going on within me, the more that I could spend time with my grief and learn how to process it, the more that my depression eased up.
Yeah.
And that to me is something that I very strongly advocate for. You know, like I'm not against meds. I just think that if you are like for me, I was on meds for over a year and I was still declining. My mental health was still declining because I wasn't doing those other things that were in my power to deal with my grief and to support my body and to process and to have people in my life to express and talk with about this. So I think it's a both and situation. Like, yes,
Hmm.
there's a lot of resources out there. Meds might be one of them for sure. Therapists might be one of them. Absolutely. And when it comes to like coaching, the coaching process and things that we can do in our everyday life to take care of ourselves and to process our grief and find the support and the resources, that can be so empowering. I know that was empowering for me when I started to realize I can heal my depression. I don't need a therapist or meds to do this. I'm doing this because now I'm sitting with my grief and I'm processing my grief and it's painful and came with a lot of layers, you know, that went all the way back to me being 11 and as a kid dealing with this, but just normalizing that there really is a lot within our power that we can tap into. Like you said, that resilience that we have within us that just needs to be explored a little bit. And I think
Yeah.
that's where the power of coaching and the breathe model and finding all of these resources that really are available to us can transform mental health when it comes to grief, especially.
And like you said, it's not a both and. I mean, it is a both and, it's not an either or. And exploring, like there's so many alternative, you know, therapies we can call them, but alternative ways of, you know, getting into our body. You do embodiment, you do cranial sacral therapy, yoga. Yoga was a big one for me when I first got into yoga, just being able to stretch and just get into my body and get my mind to settle down. Qigong, you know, and that ancient Chinese. So there's just so many different things, you know, meditation, all of that kind of stuff is just
Mhm.
amazing. So thank you for sharing your vulnerability on this. And I know that we just hope that we're not saying not to do something to anybody who's listening out there. We're just saying explore your opportunities. And the last thing that we want you to do is sit in the dark all by yourself without doing something for yourself. For me, I didn't sit in the dark over this Mother's Day weekend. I got outside. I breathed in the air. I let the sunshine just beat on my face. I went for walks, but I didn't like push myself. I just listened to birds. And that was just enough to just be able to sit and do those things. It didn't have to be, you know, major epiphany type moments, just little things like that, and being in the present moment, and just knowing that, you know, as Tyler says, you know, we matter, I matter, you matter, you're not alone. And you know, certainly Cami and I are here if you ever feel like you just even want to talk. It's not even about coaching, but you just want to reach out to us and just have a conversation. You know, don't hesitate to reach out to us because we will absolutely be there for you.
Yeah. Thanks for expressing that. It's like there's so many people that really want to support. And I know it can feel like we're a burden or it's really hard to receive that care and support, especially when we live in a culture that's very much, especially as women in society, we're all about supporting other people. And oftentimes our own health and well-being gets put lower on the priority list, or
Mhm.
maybe is not a priority, and that becomes normal and can lead to all kinds of challenges. But I want to shift that and call that out and say that like it's not selfish to put yourself first, to fill up your own cup and to receive support, to ask for the help that you need, and to gather those resources that are going to be helpful for you in your journey. And maybe people in your life don't know how to show up for you yet, but that's something that we can figure out and find the right people that are going to be able to hold the space that you need. And yeah, I think coaches and therapists and all these professionals and even friends that know how to listen can be, yeah, such a helpful part of the process.
Yep. Yep. So, well, thank you for this. And I just want to mention it's a little celebratory thing. You know, I've had a YouTube channel for a lot of years, but I did some interviews and I would put things out there. So if people had an interest in listening to people who have, you know, been on their grieving journey and where they're at and just hearing their stories. But you and I have been connected in the Confident Grief Coach show here on YouTube for not all that long. I mean, I don't even know when we started, but you know, we hit 100 subscribers. So I think that's pretty cool. Some people might who, you know, might think, oh, that's not, but to us, that is just amazing because it means what we're talking about must be resonating. So if you're listening to this and you haven't subscribed, I encourage you to hit the subscribe and like button because it helps us to get out there more and share this with people. And if you have topics that you're like, gosh, I'd really like you guys to interview someone about this or, you know, talk about this topic, send us a message. You can do it right on the YouTube comment section, and Cami and I will dive in there and do some more exploration. But yes, we're celebrating 100 subscribers as of early this week. So we know that it's just going to continue to move forward because we know um, the Confident Grief Coach program and what we are here to do as Confident Grief Coaches is to really make a difference out in the world, no matter where you're living, and help you in your grieving journey.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you all of our listeners and subscribers. This is really fun for me, and I'm really glad we get to share this with the world. So thanks for everybody who has been involved in this in some way energetically across the world watching these videos to join me and Pat for these conversations. It's very meaningful and purposeful for me personally. So thank you.
Yep. Yep. We love it. We love it. So helps us. We hope it helps you. So take care and we'll talk to you later, Cami.
Bye.